I still remember that evening clearly, not because anything loud happened, but because of how quiet my husband was. In our house in Benin City, silence was never normal. Even when money was tight, we talked. We joked. We complained. That night, he came in, dropped his car keys on the small wooden table by the door, and sat down without saying a word. I was in the kitchen, rinsing rice, when I noticed he hadn't greeted me. "Welcome," I said, trying to sound normal. He answered, but his voice was far away. "Thank you." I turned off the tap and looked at him properly. His shoulders were slumped. His tie was loosened, not neatly like he usually did, but pulled down as if he had been tugging at it all day. His eyes weren't on me. They were fixed on the floor. I knew something was wrong. I dried my hands and walked into the living room. "Is everything okay?" He hesitated. That pause, just 2 seconds, told me more than any words could. My stomach tightened. "They had a meeting at work today," he finally said. I sat down across from him. "Meeting about what?" He exhaled slowly, rubbing his palms together. "Downsizing." The word hit me like a slap. Downsizing. In the banking sector, it was never a small thing. It meant job cuts. It meant names written on lists. It meant families quietly breaking apart behind closed doors. "They said profits are down," he continued. "Head office wants to reduce staff. Not just branch managers, everyone." I tried to stay calm, but my heart had started racing. "Did they say when?" "Soon," he replied. "Very soon." There was another silence. This one was heavier. I forced myself to ask the question I was afraid of. Are you affected?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. The generator from a nearby compound hummed in the distance. Children laughed somewhere down the street. Life was moving on, unaware that our own world was starting to shake. "They didn't announce names officially," he said carefully. "But some of us were called aside." My throat went dry. And my name was mentioned," he said quietly. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything else. Not the generator, not the traffic, not even my own breathing. My husband had worked in banking for over 10 years. That job was our backbone. Our rent, our food, our dignity. In a city like Benin, losing a banking job wasn't just unemployment. It was public shame, whispered pity, and endless pressure. He finally turned to face me. "I don't want you to panic," he said quickly. "Nothing has been finalized." But it was too late. Panic had already crept into my chest. I thought of our unfinished plans. The debts we were still managing. The relatives who already depended on us. The promises we had made to ourselves about stability. "We'll pray," I said, though my voice trembled. "God will intervene." He nodded, but I could tell he was struggling to believe his own hope. That night, we ate quietly. He barely touched his food. After dinner, he went to bed early, claiming a headache. I stayed behind, cleaning the kitchen slowly, dragging out each task as if delaying something I didn't want to face. When I finally lay beside him, he was already asleep. Or pretending to be. His breathing was uneven. I turned my back to him and stared at the wall. My mind wouldn't rest. What if he lost the job? What would we do first? Sell the car, move houses, borrow money? How long before people started asking questions? How long before respect turned into pity? I thought of how proud he was of providing. How much that job meant to his identity as a man. And then a different fear crept in, one I didn't say out loud. What if prayers weren't enough this time? I hated myself for even thinking that. I got out of bed quietly and went to the sitting room. I knelt beside the couch and tried to pray, but my words came out broken. Fear kept interrupting my faith. That was when my phone buzzed softly. A message notification. I almost ignored it. At that hour, nothing good ever came with unexpected messages. But something pushed me to pick up the phone. The name on the screen made my heart skip. F.A., a former university friend. We hadn't spoken properly in years. Back then, we were close, late-night talks, shared struggles, dreams bigger than our pockets. After school, life scattered us in different directions. I opened the message. "I've been thinking about you. Are you okay?" I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't know why, but tears filled my eyes. I typed back slowly, I don't know. I didn't tell her about the bank. I didn't mention layoffs or fear or money. Yet somehow, that single reply felt like a crack opening in a wall I had been trying to hold together. She responded almost immediately, "Call me tomorrow, please." I locked my phone and pressed it against my chest. Inside the bedroom, my husband shifted in his sleep. I looked toward the door, then back at the phone. At that moment, I didn't know that this small exchange, this simple message, was the first step into a life I would soon be living in secret. I thought I was just looking for help. I didn't yet understand the cost. The next day, I couldn't focus on anything. I moved around the house like someone doing chores in a dream. My husband had already left for work early, trying to act normal, but I could still see the fear he was carrying. I kept replaying his words in my head, downsizing. My name was mentioned. By noon, my phone rang. It was Fa. I hesitated before answering. Something in me knew that once I picked that call, things would start to change. "Hello," I said. Her voice came through calm, confident, too calm for someone asking if I was okay the night before. "You sound tired," she said. "Can we meet?" We agreed on a small cafe not far from Ring Road. Public enough to feel safe, quiet enough to talk. When I saw her, I barely recognized her. She looked different, not flashy, not overdressed, just settled. Like someone whose life had finally clicked into place. Confidence sat on her easily. After the usual greetings, she studied my face. "You're worried," she said plainly. "What's going on?" I told her. "Not everything, just enough. The bank, the layoffs, the uncertainty." As I spoke, the words poured out faster than I expected, like fear finally finding permission to breathe. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "I thought so." That answer unsettled me. "You thought so?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I know a way to help." Those words should have alarmed me. Instead, they felt like relief. "I'm not asking for money," she added quickly, as if reading my thoughts. "And it's not anything illegal." I waited. "There's an opportunity," she said. "Temporary. 1 month. That's all." "1 month doing what?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Hawking." I frowned. "Hawking?" "Yes. Tomatoes. Around Ring Road Market." The idea sounded almost ridiculous. Me, hawking tomatoes? I was a banker's wife. Not that it made me better than anyone, but it didn't fit my life at all. "I don't understand," I said. "There's a spot," she explained carefully. "A very specific spot. People fight for it. After that month, things open up. Connections. Financial stability." I shook my head. "Fa, that doesn't make sense." She didn't argue. Instead, she asked quietly, "How badly do you need your husband to keep his job?" The question pierced straight through me. She continued, "Some doors don't open through prayer alone. Sometimes action is required." That sentence stayed with me. She told me it was a requirement, not a punishment. Just 1 month. No harm, no shame. I wouldn't even be alone. She would guide me. "What happens after the month?" I asked. She held my gaze. "Things change." I wanted details. I wanted guarantees. But what I wanted more than anything was certainty, something solid in the middle of fear. I thought of my husband. His silence. His forced smiles. I told myself I was doing this for us. I told myself it was just tomatoes. I agreed to think about it. That night, as I lay beside my husband, listening to his breathing, the decision slowly made itself. I wasn't chasing wealth. I was trying to save my home. And that was how I stepped closer to a life I would soon be hiding from everyone, including myself. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. My hands trembled slightly as I prepared myself, not for work at the bank, but for something I never imagined, hawking tomatoes. I dressed simply, in a plain blouse and skirt, the kind that wouldn't draw attention, yet somehow I felt exposed. The streets of Benin City were waking up slowly. The hum of early traffic mixed with the distant sounds of market vendors setting up. My stomach churned. I kept thinking of my husband, unaware that tonight he would come home expecting dinner from his wife, while I would be out selling tomatoes to strangers. Fa met me at the market. She guided me to a small, crowded section near the main road where the competition for spots was fierce. "Here," she said, pointing to an empty patch among other hawkers. "This is yours for the month. Stick to the plan. Observe. Don't talk too much." I nodded, swallowing hard. My heart pounded as I set out my tomatoes on a small mat. The morning sun glinted off the fresh produce, making the colors almost unreal, bright reds, yellows, and greens standing out against the dusty road. At first, no one came. Then slowly, buyers started drifting in. I called out gently, following Fa's instructions. Each transaction made my chest tighten. The work was exhausting, but I reminded myself, it was temporary. It was only 1 month. And I was doing this for my husband, to keep his job, to protect our family. By noon, sweat streaked my forehead, and my arms ached from standing. I glanced at my phone. My husband had sent a message, "Hope work isn't too rough today." I swallowed the guilt, texting back a simple, "All fine." He had no idea how far I had gone to protect him. And in that moment, I realized, nothing would ever feel the same again. This wasn't just a day at the market. It was the beginning of a life I would hide, a secret I could never fully explain. By the second day at Ring Road Market, I was already feeling the strain. My legs ached from standing, my feet blistered from the uneven pavement, and the morning sun beat down mercilessly. Fa had warned me, discomfort is part of the process. Endure it. I didn't know what she meant at first, but now I felt it deep in my bones. The buyers came in waves. Some were kind, chatting politely, asking about prices. Others ignored me completely, bargaining harshly, leaving me anxious that I wouldn't make enough to meet whatever invisible quota I was supposed to fulfill. Each time I handed over a few coins, my hands shook, not from excitement but from fear and exhaustion. By midday, sweat streaked my face, my shirt sticking uncomfortably to my back. I leaned over my tomatoes, pretending to examine them, but my mind was elsewhere, at home, on my husband. He would be in the office, worried, unaware that I was out here performing this strange task to save him. Fa appeared mid-morning, moving between stalls, watching me carefully. She gave no words of comfort, only a small nod. I realized quickly that approval was earned silently. No mistakes, no complaints, no questions. Just obedience. As the days stretched on, I noticed subtle changes in myself. My patience was thinning, my voice sharper than usual, my hands trembling more than before. I felt a quiet rage bubbling, though I couldn't say why. Was it the humiliation, the exhaustion, the secret I now carried like a heavy stone in my chest? Perhaps all of it. By the time the sun began to dip behind the buildings, my back ached, my head throbbed, and my spirit felt lighter in no way. I walked home slowly, tomatoes sold, money in my pocket, but the cost had already started to show, and I knew the days ahead would be even harder. By the 4th day, lying had become part of my routine. I hated that about myself. Each morning, I left the house early, telling my husband I had found a temporary cleaning job near a silo. I rehearsed the lie so well that it almost sounded like truth. He would nod absent-mindedly, distracted by his own worries, rumors at the bank, names quietly disappearing from staff lists, the fear sitting permanently on his shoulders. At Ring Road Market, the days blended together. Tomatoes in the morning, voices shouting prices, sunlight bouncing off zinc roofs. People passing without knowing that every step I took deeper into this agreement was pulling me further away from who I used to be. Fa visited again that afternoon. This time, she didn't smile at all. "You're doing well," she said quietly. "But remember, no shortcuts. 1 full month." I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. That night, my husband noticed something was wrong. "You've changed," he said softly as we lay in bed. "You're distant. You don't laugh anymore." I turned my face away from him so he wouldn't see the tears gathering in my eyes. How could I explain that I was living 2 lives? One as a wife trying to hold her marriage together, and another as a woman bound by a promise she didn't fully understand. Sleep didn't come easily anymore. When it did, it was shallow and restless. I began waking up before dawn, my heart racing for no reason, my body tense as if something unseen was watching. And that was when I realized the most frightening part. This was no longer just about tomatoes, or money, or my husband's job. Something had shifted inside me, and whatever this path was, it was slowly demanding more than I was prepared to give. I didn't confront her immediately. That night, when she came back home later than usual, I pretended to be asleep. I listened as she dropped her bag softly, like someone afraid of making noise in a house full of questions. She stood by the door for a long time. I could feel it, the kind of silence that weighs more than words. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her about the rumors at the bank, how management had circulated another internal memo, how my name appeared again on the list of possible staff to be laid off. I tried to sound calm, but my voice betrayed me. Banking had been my life for years. Losing that job would shake everything we had built. That was when she broke. She sat down slowly, covered her face with her hands, and started crying, not the quiet kind. This was the cry of someone who had been carrying a heavy secret alone. She told me the truth. It started with an old university friend. Not family, not someone close to our marriage. Just someone she reconnected with out of desperation. The friend claimed she had connections and a way to secure financial stability quickly, but there was a condition. A strange one. To prove commitment and secure a future position, she had to hawk tomatoes at Ring Road Market every morning for 1 full month. It sounded harmless when she said it. Temporary, embarrassing, but harmless. She admitted she agreed because of me. She said she couldn't sleep anymore after hearing about the layoffs. She imagined our rent unpaid, our respect gone, our life collapsing overnight. She said she didn't want to watch me break under the weight of unemployment. But as she spoke, I realized something chilled me. This wasn't just sacrifice. It was fear-driven obedience. She told me there were rules she wasn't allowed to break. Times she had to show up. People she had to report to. Questions she wasn't allowed to ask. And the more she spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't normal hustle. It was control disguised as opportunity. And she had stepped into it because she was trying to save me. After she finished talking, the room felt smaller, not because of the space, but because of what we had just stepped into without knowing. I kept replaying her words in my head. Rules, reporting, silence, no questions. That wasn't opportunity, that was a trap. I asked her if anything strange had happened at the market. At first, she hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. She told me some days the same woman would come to her stand and say nothing, just stare at her tomatoes before nodding and walking away. Other days, a man would remind her of the time, always the time. If she arrived late, she would be warned. Not threatened, just warned. Calmly, coldly, she said her dreams had changed. She began waking up tired, anxious, restless. She stopped praying the way she used to, not because she didn't want to, but because each time she tried, her mind felt blocked. Distracted, heavy. That's when fear entered my chest for real. Not fear of poverty, not fear of losing my job, but fear that something unseen had already entered our home. At the bank, things got worse. My manager stopped making eye contact with me. Files were reassigned. Access reduced. It felt like I was slowly being erased. And the more pressure I felt at work, the more dependent she became on that strange process at the market. That's how deception works. It doesn't attack loudly. It solves one problem while quietly creating 10 more. One evening, she came home shaking. She said the university friend told her the final week was the most important. That she must not tell her husband everything yet. That fear could ruin the outcome. When she told me that, something inside me snapped. That was the moment I knew. Whatever this was, it was feeding on secrecy. And anything that survives on secrecy is never sent by God. That night, for the first time in weeks, we prayed together. Not long, not loud, just desperate. I asked God one simple question. Lord, What are we involved in? I didn't get an answer immediately, but I felt a warning. And once God warns you, you're already standing at the edge of something dangerous. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay beside my wife, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of generators and passing cars outside our street in Benin City. Her breathing was uneven. Mine was worse. Every instinct in me was screaming that we were standing at a crossroads, even though nothing dramatic had happened yet. That's the dangerous part about deception. It doesn't always announce itself with chaos. Sometimes it whispers urgency, opportunity, and sacrifice. Just before dawn, she spoke. In a low voice, almost like she was afraid the walls might hear her, she said she had been given one final instruction. Nothing ritualistic, nothing dramatic, just one more rule: absolute obedience until the month ended. No questions, no prayers involving outsiders, no interference. I sat up. That was when I knew we had to choose. Because obedience without truth is not faith. And silence without peace is not protection. I told her we would not continue like this. Not in secret, not in fear, not at the cost of our spiritual peace. I reminded her of who we were before desperation entered our home. I reminded her that provision that comes with confusion always collects its price later. She cried, not because she wanted to continue, but because she was afraid to stop. Afraid of disappointing her friend. Afraid of losing the chance. Afraid that my job would still be taken away. That fear told me everything. We prayed again, not polished prayers, not confident prayers, just honest ones. We asked God for mercy, for clarity, and for a way out that wouldn't destroy us. That morning, she did not go to the market. Her phone rang repeatedly. She didn't answer, and for the first time in weeks, our home felt quiet again, not empty, not tense, just quiet. I didn't know what the consequences would be yet. I didn't know how work would turn out. I didn't even know if we had acted in time. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happens next, we had chosen truth over fear. And that choice was only the beginning. I didn't confront her immediately after I found out. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I was afraid of what those answers would do to us. That night, as I lay on the bed beside her, I realized something painful. Sometimes the people we love the most carry burdens they are too ashamed, too afraid, or too desperate to share. She thought she was protecting our home. She thought silence was strength. But silence almost destroyed everything we were trying to save. Marriage is not just about love. It is about trust. And when trust is replaced with secrets, even well-intentioned ones, cracks begin to form. Looking back now, I understand how fear pushed her into that decision. I understand how pressure can make people live double lives they never planned to live. But understanding does not erase the damage secrecy causes. This story is not about blaming her alone. It's about how desperation can slowly turn good intentions into painful choices. It's about how easily communication breaks when survival becomes the only goal. If there's one lesson I learned, it's this: no problem is solved by hiding it from the person meant to face it with you. Sometimes, the real danger isn't what we're trying to fix, it's what we choose not to say along the way. And if you're listening to this story right now, maybe it's reminding you to have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's a warning, or maybe it's a chance. Because secrets may feel like protection at first, but in the end, truth is the only thing strong enough to save a home. If this story touched you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Pretty Tales for more powerful, real-life stories. Like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story.